What's going on, guys? So this is first in the series of videos where I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about CSS, right? And this video is for total beginners, even if you've never heard um, about CSS before, or even if you've never done anything about CSS. This is the playlist that will teach you everything you need to know about CSS to begin to design beautiful web pages from the scratch. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, let's outline the things we're going to cover in this video. So we're going to have introduction to CSS. We're going to set up our IDE, that's integrated development environment, where you'll be writing the codes. We're going to see the basic CSS syntax. So we're going to look at selectors, properties, and values, CSS rules and declarations. Actually, this is rules. That's a typo there. We're going to see how to apply CSS, the different ways to actually use CSS, the three ways. Then we're going to look at box model. We're going to look at how to style text. We're going to look at layouts. We're going to look at responsiveness and media query, and every other thing in between. So this is pretty much a very brief outline of what we are going to cover. So what is CSS? So CSS is an acronym for Cascading Style Sheet. It's basically a style sheet language. It's not really a programming language per se. So it is the foundational technology for describing the visual representation of a web page. Okay, so we use HTML to describe the structure of a web page, while we use CSS to, give it a visual appeal. So usually when you write your HTML, when you describe the structure of your web page with HTML, it's pretty much just a text in a white background. That's the default representation in a browser, and I'm going to show you that shortly. So it's just a bunch of text with a white background, no layouts, no form of visual appeal. But to make it visually appealing, you throw in CSS. That's basically what CSS is for. So we're going to see that when we jump into the code. So CSS is basically not a programming language. So it's not a programming language. Like I said earlier, it's a style sheet language. Basically use it to create style, and it's always used together with HTML. So you don't use CSS on its own. CSS is always used together with HTML. So you can use HTML and CSS to create beautiful static website. Right, so we're going to see how to do that. So let's get started. So let's look at the basic syntax of CSS. So we use CSS selectors to target an element, an HTML element. So like I said earlier, CSS cannot be used on its own. It's always complements HTML. So we use something called CSS selectors to target which HTML element we want to apply a style on. So let's say we want to change the color of a paragraph, or we want to change the background color of a particular section of our HTML document. So we use something called selectors to target that part of our HTML document. And now there are different kinds of selectors. There are different options when it comes to selecting a particular section of our web page to style. So there are a couple of options, and we're going to see that all of that shortly. Now once we've selected the element we want to style, we then use something called CSS declarations to apply styles. Now each unit of style we apply is called a CSS declaration, and it's basically a key value pair. So let's say we have selected a paragraph and we want to change the font size, right? That's a CSS declaration. So the font size is usually what we call the property, and then the value we give it, let's say 50 pixel or 12 pixel, that's the value, right? So a CSS declaration is basically a key value pair that we use to apply a specific style to a particular HTML element. Yeah. So then a combination of the selector and the declarations is what we call CSS rules, right? So a particular CSS rule can have multiple CSS declarations. So let's just see what this thing looks like. So this is a typical CSS rule, right? So first we have the selector. Think of this as a pseudocode. I mean, selector is just a generic term I'm using to explain this. So you have the selector, and then you have a curly bracket, and inside the curly bracket you begin to list your CSS declarations. So property one, like I said earlier, property one could be like font size, and then you give it a value of, let's say, 12 pixels, right? Then property two could be color, and then you can give it, say, a value of red, right? So these are what we call CSS declarations. Now the whole of this is what we call CSS rule. Now a CSS rule can have multiple declarations, as you can see, but what's important is that each declaration is separated by a semicolon, right? So um, this is pretty much the general syntax of CSS. Now, depending on how you use it, right, which we are going to see shortly. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to start setting up our development environment to actually start writing CSS. So I'll see you in the next video.